Why do you do what you do? If money wasn't a factor, would you still be running your business? Now, this is something that has been heavily occupying my mind recently. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and make a video about it. So, a little bit of context, my name is Sonia. I've been a business owner for 7 years, and I just be thinking about a lot of stuff. And so I wanted to have a conversation and pose this topic to talk about how do you figure out what your motivation is in running a business or being an entrepreneur. Now, money is not an evil thing, right? Money is a tool that we can use to access a variety of things in our life. And so for me, I often think about what role does money play in my life? But the bigger picture is what is my motivation when it comes to running this business? So, as we are in year 7 of business, we are slowly approaching year 10. And so, when we get to the 10-year mark, I am very curious about what will my life look like and what will the business look like once we reach year 10. And so every day when I think about my business, I think about what is it that keeps me in the business, keeps me motivated to keep doing business, and ultimately, what is my true motivation for wanting to be and continuing to be an entrepreneur. Now, I think this topic has been on my mind lately because I've been observing how a lot of business owners operate and how they move in business. Now, I think this was partially sparked by a lot of the things that we're seeing happen right now in current events when we talk about how businesses are prioritizing profits over people. When we think about the situation with Target and them essentially eliminating their DEI policy, we're seeing a lot of companies kind of follow suit and do similar or take similar actions as well. And so the challenging part when companies prioritize profit over people is that it becomes a question of what is that business owner's values or their motivation when it comes to their business. And so I say all that to say it's been making me think a lot about how I show up in my own business and what my own motivation is. So when I really sat with it and thought about it, I was like, what keeps me in this business? What makes me excited when it's not attached to a contract or a dollar sign or just money in general? And so for me, I've discovered that my motivation in business is freedom and autonomy, which I kind of already knew a little bit when I share a little bit of my founder story. I knew that having autonomy in the work that I do is just extremely important to me. And so let me give you a little bit of context about how I got there and why autonomy and freedom is so important to me. So back in 2016, I had a series of life changing events that happened back to back. And so it really threw me off and really put me in a position to really reflect on my life and what it is that I wanted for my life, what I wanted for my career, and what that would look like moving forward. So in May of 2016, I had a divorce. I got a divorce from a very traumatic marriage. And so if you've been through a divorce, I mean, hell, if you've been through a really bad breakup, then you kind of know like how that throws you off a bit in terms of just how your life functions, right? And so having to figure out like how to move forward, what does that look like, how to pick up the pieces, how to heal from that situation, like so many things came up, just from that divorce alone. And so that was in May of 2016. And when I tell y'all 2016 was a lot, I literally got a tattoo right here. It says resilience, because that year really took me through it. And so I had to get a reminder of like, you can overcome anything. You just got to figure out how to stay resilient, how to stay strong. And so that was in May 2016. And then in August of 2016, literally just a few months later, the house I owned at the time flooded. So we had a really weird weather situation here where it had rained for like 3 days straight. And so all of the waterways, and so if you're familiar with South Louisiana, there's water everywhere. And so there are bridges everywhere, just literally everywhere. So the neighborhood I was living in at the time where I owned my house was right in front of a bayou. And so a bayou, if you're not familiar with it, it's essentially like a stream, like just a flow of water connected to like a larger body of water. And so the bayou right behind my house had taken on so much water that the neighborhood started to flood. And then, I mean, at that point, there was nothing I could do about it. So the house got 4.5 feet of water inside, which was essentially a total loss. And so, having went through a divorce in May, and then now in August of 2016, lost my house, and that put me in a position of like I was hopping from place to place. I had friends letting me sleep on their sofa, like so. If you can imagine, just like the trauma that comes with a natural disaster, that was a lot to add on to already trying to navigate like having gone through a divorce just a few months earlier. Y'all, November 2016, the job I had at the time, I was working at a nonprofit. The ED at the time pulled me in and essentially, let me know I wasn't performing, to, I guess, the organization standards. My productivity had dropped. I just was completely mentally checked out. And I understood. And so essentially what they did was ask me to leave the job instead of, I guess, like firing me. And so it was really hurtful. I understood why, they needed to make that decision, but ultimately it was really hurtful because I felt like I felt, I guess, dehumanized in that situation where I guess my expectation was to have a boss that understood maybe like what I was going through. And so because I felt like that wasn't considered it, I took that situation really hard of like being asked to leave the job. Granted, everything I already had going on. And so 2016 was a very, very difficult year. And so of course, as I mentioned, being in difficult situations, I'm a person who tends to become really reflective when I'm in difficult situations because my biggest thought process is how do I not allow myself to go through these situations again, or like what lesson do I need to learn from it? And so for me, I think the biggest takeaway was the job situation, right? And I was like, I don't ever want to be put in this situation again where I'm already struggling at life and then my job comes and takes that from under me. And so in 2017, I started my business. And so I didn't touch the business for a while because I still was trying to figure out life. I didn't tell y'all, mind you, all this stuff was happening. I was a full time PhD student as well. So it's literally trying to get through classes with all of this stuff going on too. And so started the business in 2017 in the living room of the apartment I was living in at the time because I was like, I gotta figure out better for myself. I knew I wanted better for my life. And so I was like, I need to figure out something. And so let the business sit for a few years, dabbled in it off and on while I had other jobs as well. So I was trying to manage jobs, school, business, just all, all the things of life. And then the pandemic happened. A few folks reached out to the business or reached out to me during the pandemic because at that time a lot of organizations were figuring out how to restructure, figuring out exactly what they needed to do to kind of pandemic proof their business. And so that's when business really picked up for my business during the pandemic. Now, at the time, I still had other jobs. 2022, 23, I went into the tech industry. So I worked for a software development company who had a product specifically for nonprofits, since that was my area of expertise and what I really enjoyed is working in nonprofits and really helping nonprofits figure out their strategy, their structure, all of those great things. And so at the time in 2023, the tech company started having some challenges. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm giving so much of myself to these jobs. I'm like, why don't I figure out how to put that energy into my own business? And so 2023, left a comfortable tech job and jumped straight into full-time entrepreneurship. And so that in itself was a very interesting journey of like dabbling between jobs, but also knowing like I still had this business that needed my attention. And so swiftly jumped into full-time business ownership, and things really took off once I stepped out on faith, but also trusted myself and my capabilities as well. Now, what has been very interesting, I think, over the last year and a half, so 2023 up until now, is since I'm in business full time, I spend a lot of my time, working with other business owners, building up my community and my ecosystem of people who own businesses. And so I think what's been really interesting is to watch how people navigate business, especially when we talk about money, right? So, one thing that was really, I guess, interesting for me when I started making a good chunk of money in my business was that I had to figure out what is my relationship with money. So, because I grew up in an environment where we had resources, but not necessarily a lot of monetary resources, we never really talked about money, right? And so, when I became an adult, especially when I became a business owner, it took me some work to figure out what were the gaps in my life around my relationship with money. Now, I say that because in observing how people move in the business space, money is a motivator for a lot of people. And not that that's a bad thing, but I think when there's not a grasp on what your relationship with money looks like, having money as your motivator can have detrimental effects. And I say that because I've had instances with some of my peers in business where because money was involved, it really impacted the relationship in a negative way. And so and I'm talking about up until like recently this has happened to me. And so because of that, what I've been really intentional about is thinking about what motivates me to keep running a business, to keep being an entrepreneur. And so when I really sat with it, I was like, ooh, I want to talk about this on video. So when I thought about my motivation for business, it took me back to 2016, where, like I mentioned, I was asked to leave a job. And so I decided that when I thought back to like starting the business after that situation, I decided that my biggest reasoning for wanting to start a business, there's like squirrels playing outside and they're distracting me. But one of my biggest motivators for wanting to start this business was freedom and autonomy. And so, what I want to talk about in this video is why freedom and autonomy are my motivators for business. But I want to also talk about some other areas of motivation that are relatable to me, and they might also be relatable to you as well. So, when I talk about freedom and autonomy being my motivator for my business, what that looks like is a few different things. So, one is that it is so important for me to be able to have control over not only my professional life, but also my schedule as well. And so, this might be really relatable to you if you currently work at a job, but maybe you're thinking about becoming a business owner, entrepreneur. And so, one of the things that used to really frustrate me about working for other people was the inflexibility that comes to being a human at a job. And so when you think about instances of like needing a day off, maybe you need a mental health day, maybe you're physically sick and need some time off. I'm a person, I have a dynamic disability that does impact like my energy sometimes. And so there are days where I'm just lethargic and I have no like understanding why. And so sometimes there are days where I just do not have it in me to work. And so I have the flexibility to be able to take the day off if I need to, or work from the bed if I need to. And so I know that is a challenge for a lot of people, when it comes to working a job. And so for me, one of my favorite things, and one of the things that is such a blessing in owning a business, is that I have control of that. So I'm able to, if I need to take a day off, just take it. I can reschedule some things or move some things around. Absolutely love the team that I work with. And so if there are days where I, just need to step away, my team members are able to step in. And so what's really beautiful about having freedom and autonomy as a motivator for me is that my company's culture also prioritizes freedom and autonomy for my team members also. And so what that looks like is that some of our benefits include unlimited paid time off. And so what that really means is that if my team members need to take the day off, take the day off. I'm not asking you questions about it. You don't even have to tell me why you need a day off, because I understand why it's so important to prioritize humanity in business. Because I've struggled with that at previous jobs as well. And so one of the pieces of culture I wanted to create when I thought about like developing the business and eventually bringing on team members is that I wanted people to feel that freedom and autonomy as well. Especially when I think about like people who are like caregivers, or people who are maybe parents or have significant others, or people who just really have other priorities outside of their job. I tell my team members all the time, I do not expect work to be your priority. Like, please go focus on the things that you need to focus on. And I know that's a bit strange when we talk about like the traditional workforce, but the reality of what I learned about my business and the work that we do is that people are more innovative, they're more productive, and they're more excited about work when there's that ability to have freedom and to have autonomy in their work. So those are one of my biggest motivators, and I really can see the difference that it plays in the success of my business when it comes to our culture. Now, another part of freedom and autonomy as a motivator for me is having flexibility over the decisions that I get to make in the business, especially when we talk about like making decisions that are aligned with my personal values, but also my professional values as well, which I do have two separate sets of values, one for my personal life, but also one for my professional life in the business. And so it's really helpful to be in a space where I can make value aligned decisions, business decisions, and not have to like jump through all these hoops and loops and whatever the case is. And I'll say this was also really helpful because I'm a person who trusts myself when it comes to make decisions. I love being able to just make decisions and not have to like go through like all these different levels of like leadership and management, things of that nature. I can just make the decisions that I feel are best with the company. Now, this works because I am a person who considers almost every aspect of the impact of a decision, because I've sat with it a while. I've thought about what could go well, what could go wrong, what could kind of happen in between. And so, because I take the time to be very intentional about the decisions I make, I love having the freedom to just make decisions the way I need to. One of my favorite things when I talk about autonomy and freedom as a motivator for me is being able to have full creative direction of the way the business functions. Now, I'm a true creative by heart. So I am a painter. I love pottery. Like, I love music, any type of like creative activity. That is what I love. And so I love that I'm able to bring that into the business as well and have full creative control or direction of the business, without having to answer to like a boss or somebody like that. And so I just love being able to have freedom and autonomy in my business. Another thing I think I mentioned a little bit of, but having flexibility and work-life harmony. I don't call it balance because I think balance can be very difficult to achieve when you're juggling a lot of different priorities, which most of us are. And so I love being able to have the flexibility in my work and in my life without feeling like I'm chasing money to do that. I have a very comfortable life. I'm also very frugal too. So those things work really well hand in hand when it comes to running a startup. Because then I don't feel like I have to like have all this money to keep a comfortable lifestyle. And so that gives me flexibility in the business of just what it all looks like, on a grand scheme of things. So, freedom and autonomy, absolute motivator for me. But what I want to share are some other ways that I find motivation in business that might be relatable to you also. And then even some of the areas of motivation I see for some of the clients that we work with also. So, legacy and impact is another area that can tend to be a motivator for people. It definitely is a motivator for me as well. Because with our business, with the business, so I run a consulting firm. I don't think I mentioned that. And so a lot of our clients tend to be nonprofits, both big and small. We do work with social entrepreneurs. So if you think about athletes who start foundations and nonprofits because they want to give back to their community, or other individuals who are high net worth individuals individuals, or even if you're not a high net worth individual, but you want to give back to your community, these are folks who are often motivated by impact and legacy, which is important to me as well. I love that in the business we do prioritize philanthropy. We just launched our philanthropic arm called SDC Cares. So we have a few different areas of social impact that we are focusing on. And so I love that when folks are impacted by I love that when folks are motivated by impact and legacy, what this looks like is that they're driven by changing people's lives. So we know that when folks start nonprofits, like their goal is to literally change their community or change someone's lives. And that's why I love working with nonprofits so much. Also, folks are really interested in like solving some type of societal issue or some type of societal problem, or even if they just want to leave a legacy, right? So, and those things are not necessarily contributed to money. And so I love that because that is also important for me when I think about my business. I think about building something that is bigger than just me. So when my time is up on this earth and I expire, and pass on to the other side, I want folks to remember me as somebody who is committed to changing the world. And to me, the world doesn't have to mean me making impact on a global scale. It could just mean some child in my hometown hears my name and they're like, oh my God, I remember when Sonia did this. Like for me, that is like the legacy that I want to leave, where even if just one person is positively impacted by the work that I do, that is so important for me. Also, when I think about legacy, I think about eventually one day getting married, having a kid. And so when I have a child, I'm grateful that I'm in a space where, let's say my child wants to do something from scratch that's never been done before, right? What has been super beneficial and so beautiful about being an entrepreneur, especially a first generation business owner, is that I've built something from scratch that I had no idea of what I was doing. So I was able to build this foundation that I can then pour into other people, or like I mentioned, even when I have a kid, and help them figure out how do you build things from scratch and how do you sustain things from scratch. And so for me, that's such a beautiful space to be in, where I can build that type of legacy and leave that type of impact, not only in the world, but also like in my community also. Another area of motivation that I really, really enjoy, and again, this might be relatable to you as well, is creative expression and innovation, which again, as I mentioned, I'm a creative. And so I love that my business is a creative outlet for me. Even if consulting doesn't sound creative, it's a very creative field to be in. And so for me, I love content creation. I know that I know that there can be disdain a lot of times when it comes to content creation, because people often attribute it to influencing, which I feel like those are kind of two separate things. And so for me, what I love about content creation is that it's a creative outlet for me. So I love being able to make videos. I love editing videos. I love it. And then I love being able to like put my own little special touch on it. I love being able to like market my business in a way that really speaks to who I am as a person, and really speaks to the work that we do and the impact that we make with the people we work with. But I absolutely love just being able to like bring my ideas to life. And that's what I love about consulting. So literally what I do for people all day, every day, is help them solve their organizational issues. And so because of that, when folks come to me with some type of challenge, it's really easy for me to think about solutions that can help them. But sometimes those solutions do require creativity and innovation. And so I love that owning a consulting firm is essentially a creative outlet for me and how my brain functions. It also is really helpful when it comes to like marketing the business, because I have creative expertise, and I just love being creative in my life. Then I'm able to market the business in ways that feel really fun. I don't have to like often follow trends that are out there, because I just think about what makes sense for us and what speaks to the people who are our target audience. And so I absolutely love being able to have creative expression and innovation in the work that we do. So that is a motivator for me as well. Now, this next motivator, y'all, this one right here. This one right here, personal growth and mastery. Now, business entrepreneurship is a growth journey. I had posted a post earlier at the start of this year that said entrepreneurship is personal development in disguise. And y'all, that is so true in so many ways. And I'll even add on top of that and say, entrepreneurship is a very spiritual journey. So whether you are religious or not, this is a very spiritual journey that will test you in a lot of ways. Once you allow yourself to release the resistance of this journey and the growth that happens with entrepreneurship, that is when you will start to see success defined by what success means to you, right? So, again, for me, because my top motivator is freedom and autonomy, success for me, I'm recording this on a Tuesday at noon. This is success for me, right? Being able to have the flexibility and the freedom to live my life on my own terms while still doing something that I absolutely, absolutely love. And so I say personal growth and mastery is definitely a motivation because entrepreneurship is very challenging. Business ownership is very challenging, especially if you are, again, first generation business owner. If you're in an industry that is a very new industry, a very innovative industry, it will require a lot of you when it comes to personal growth. And so the sooner you lean into it, the easier the journey will be. It's not easy, but it'll be easier once you start to let yourself lean into it. And so what I want to say is that business becomes a journey of self improvement, problem solving, and stepping into leadership. And so that is definitely a motivator for me. Once I saw how much I was growing personally as a result of the effort and intention I was putting into my business, then I'm in a space now where I just lean into the challenges that come with it because I'm always in a mindset of what will I learn from this challenge that is happening in my business. And so that is definitely a top motivator for me. Mastery is as well because I always want to be very diligent and disciplined in my business and in life just in general. Mastery is also something that I do prioritize. And so it is a motivator for me in the business. And again, when I'm telling y'all these motivators, none of this is attached to money. Money is a tool. So none of these are attached to money. Now, another motivator for me is community and connection. I am so blessed and grateful for the amazing connections and the community that I am building as a business owner. And so, one of my favorite things about this community or these communities that I'm a part of is I love watching people do things they're passionate about. So when I think about my circle of people I know who are like business owners, social entrepreneurs, they literally take this little pea-sized idea that they have and grow it into this whole empire. And it's really agnostic of like any industry. I mean, there's so many amazing people I meet who take just something they're super passionate about or something that they just know really well and they turn it into a way to make money for themselves. And I love watching people do that. I love watching people follow their dreams. I really, really do. And so for me, I love just being able to be in communities of people who are really innovative, who are committed, who are disciplined, who are excited about their passions and just their interests, who are diligent. I might already said that, but people who just love what they're doing. I love to be in this space with people because that is how I function as a person. And so I love that I'm on the same frequency with other people who are just super, super excited about making their dream become a reality. I love mentorship. I know a lot of times when people think about mentorship, they think about reaching out to somebody who they deem more successful. I tend to lean towards peer mentorship because I feel like there's so much value that I can learn from like the people around me. And so I love being able to gain perspective and insights from people who are my peers because it helps me kind of shift my mindset when it comes to certain things. I love networking. I'm more of like a one-to-one networker because I love like intimate relationships and really getting to know people on an intimate level outside of just what they do to make money. I love just getting to know people because what I've learned in business is that people do business with other people. And so I think it's been really helpful to really understand like how I thrive when it comes to my community and the connections. And then also, I just love people empowering their industry. I love watching people. And again, when I tell y'all, I have friends, I have colleagues, I have acquaintances in like literally every industry you can think of. I love watching people navigate their industry and become leaders in the industry because I think that's so important. For me in my field, I love being a Black woman in consulting because consulting tends to be a white male dominated industry. When you think about like the really large consulting firms like the big four, those tend to be white male led industries. And so not to say that their perspectives are not important because I think we all bring very important perspectives to our work. I love occupying the space of being a Black woman in consulting because I think we bring very unique perspectives just from our everyday lived experiences. And so when I get to work with certain types of clients, I really get to pour into them in ways that are unique to just who I am as a person. And so I really enjoy seeing how the consulting industry is shifting based on those very unique and diverse perspectives. And so that's another part of what I enjoy about community and connection. But for the most part, I look at money as a tool, right? I look at money as a tool, but not as a goal in how I show up in my business. Yes, money can be a motivator. I like making money. I like making money. I like being able to have the money for experiences. So I love to travel. And so I love being able to have the money to be able to travel as often as I would like to. I like having money to be able to buy things that I like. I like having money to spend on other people. And so I recognize that money can be a motivator, but for me, is not my top motivator. What's been important for me though, again, as I mentioned, is understanding my relationship with money, but more so of understanding how I want to use my money. And so for me, I'm not obsessed with wealth because I live a very frugal lifestyle. But what I appreciate about having money as a tool is that it creates stability for me. Again, especially coming from a family where, you know, we didn't always have the monetary resources we needed. So I appreciate having money as a source of stability. But what I absolutely love when it comes to how I use money as a tool is being able to give back to other people. So philanthropy for me is one of just like my top reasons why I use or how I use my money. And so I love being able to reinvest my money in causes that are important to me, whether it's like being able to go to the store and buy a bunch of stuff and then go and fill up like my local community closet and refrigerator, being able to just give back to people who are in need and, you know, it doesn't affect me negatively in any way. That is my favorite way to use money. And so that is what my motivation is when it comes to my business. My motivation is to be able to have freedom and autonomy and just be able to be creative and be able to be a master of the work that I do, but also being able to leave impact and legacy. And so when you think about what your priorities are in your entrepreneurship journey or in your business ownership journey, and when you think about what your motivators are, take some time to consider why is it that you do what you do. And if money was not an option, then what would that, or if money was not the reason or the default for you, then what does your life look like without, you know, without being motivated by money? So I want you to sit with that a little while. I hope that there was a nugget that you took away from this. And I appreciate you taking your time to sit with me and listen to me talk about just how I prioritize my motivations in business. I hope to see you on the next video. Love you. Take care. Peace, y'all.